when I was writing this talk and I was thinking about what do I want to base this talk on, I was thinking how the years are going by, and as the years go by, it seems that the collective consciousness of spirit is growing. And we can see that because there are more and more and more books written with some kind of a spiritual intention to them. This makes my hand talking a little hard, but I'm going to have to reel that in. So we have all these books, many of them in our book room, in our library, and we have, these aren't, the books I'm talking about aren't our classic Unity titles and, our old Unity titles. These are like mainstream books. These are books that they're not religious per se. They speak to people from every walk of life. And what they teach in their messages in one way or the other is how we all can, if we choose to, live happier, healthier, more peaceful lives. And, we're all familiar with some of the great new authors. I wanted to say new thought authors, but I don't know if that's really the right way to put it. But people like Deepak Chopra, Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, and Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of a little book called The Four Agreements. How many have read The Four Agreements? Okay. It's okay if you haven't. I want to tell you a little bit about it, though. The Four Agreements was first published in 1997. It has sold 5.2 million copies in the U.S., and it's been translated into 38 languages. So what is it about this little book that has such universal appeal that 18 years later, it's still being bought and taught and practiced? So really, that kind of answer is a little bit subjective. So what I started to explore about this, since we're at a Unity Church, I started to explore what are the commonalities between the teachings of Don Miguel Ruiz, it's not his teaching, it's his heritage. What are the commonalities between that teaching, the teachings of Jesus, and the basic Unity principles? So that's how we're gonna take the Four Agreements and we're gonna use them as a basis today. So before we do that, though, we're gonna have a little crash course behind me on the Four Agreements. And the first one is, hopefully you can, I'll kind of stand over here so you can hear me. The first one is be impeccable with your word and silence your cell phone. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So, be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of the word in the direction of truth and love. Now, as I go through these are the words of the author, okay? The second one, don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinion of and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. The third agreement is don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. That is true. We'll talk about that. And finally, always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best, and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. So those are the Four Agreements. So starting with the first one, be impeccable with your word. Basic Unity principle has taught us that our thoughts, which our thoughts are words in our heads, right? We've learned that thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Huge Unity teaching, okay? So what we're thinking on is going to grow. The words that are in our minds, these words can be negative, they can be positive, they can be a lot of things, but we're creating our reality with words. So we want to be very careful about how we use them. The 14th commandment tells us, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." What does that have to do with anything? I'm going to tell you. Adultery is basically when we weaken something, when we make it less pure by either adding or subtracting things that aren't needed. So metaphysically, we're committing adultery when we use our words to harm rather than heal, to be hateful rather than to be loving. Elizabeth Ann Turner wrote that to commit adultery is to weaken the higher consciousness by the injection of unnecessary thoughts, words, and emotions. So in many ways, less is more, And finally, Jesus' teaching, and this is really one of Jesus' greatest hits right here, is Matthew chapter 12, 35 to 37. And he teaches, "For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him. And an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. But I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word that they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned." And we know this. Very, very familiar teaching. So being impeccable with your word is not only about speaking your truth with integrity and grace. It's also about being aware of the power that your words have and knowing that your words have an enormous power to heal, but they also can be very hurtful. And we do sometimes, inadvertently, we do hurt people by what we say. So when we speak with integrity and we say what we mean, we remain in harmony with the truth of our being. And we stay in harmony with one another by always being honest with our thoughts, words, and deeds. And sometimes it's scary to be honest. I think we've all sometimes, I don't want to say it's a lie, it's not a lie, but sometimes we'll speak to somebody, we don't want to hurt their feelings. I always say unsolicited advice is not a good idea. People don't always take well to that. So, you kind of have to know your audience, and you kind of, you just treat people well, and your words reflect that. So, the second agreement, it reminds us to not take anything personally. And again, this is something we do because as human beings, it seems reasonable to lash out at somebody who you think has hurt you or has something in it for you or, has done something. Sometimes if a relationship fails, we'll blame ourselves. We feel guilty. We're like, what did I do wrong? We will, we'll blame ourselves. And, sometimes we feel we end up feeling guilty. And we're thinking, well, what did I do wrong here? We kind of are beating ourselves up. And sometimes, too, we think that, we're unlucky. Boy, I'm just so unlucky. I'm at the wrong place at the wrong time. And these kind of things speak to taking things personally. So we have to remember that other people's anger, their indifference, or their dislike has nothing to do with us personally. And it can seem pretty personal if somebody's in your face, if they're yelling at you, if they blame you. I remember my kids telling me, you're ruining my life, right? I didn't feel guilty about that at all. But if you believe in the truth with a capital T, and know that you and only you are responsible for your state of consciousness, for your own life, when you know that, you have to know that these people that are angry, that are, whatever they are, these people that are ruining your lives, they are choosing to be that way. And we all choose our state of consciousness. So they're choosing to be angry. They're choosing to have they're choosing their consciousness just as we do. So you have to kind of think of it, if we have that freedom of choice, if we are able to say yes or say no, we have to give other people that same right. And we're not always going to agree, with what they're doing. But that's really none of our business. It's not for us, to try to figure out what's going on with people who seem to be unhappy. If they ask us for advice, maybe we could help them. But they are choosing things. So when we are taking things personally, we kind of are allowing ourselves to be sucked up into someone else's misery. And we don't want to do that. That's not helpful for them or for ourselves. Now, as spiritual beings, we know, and we've said it this morning, there is only one presence and one power. We have faith that in spite of appearances, there is only love and peace between us and any other person, known or unknown. There's a book by Gary Simmons called The Eye of the Storm, and one of the chapters is called No One is Against You, and this one paragraph kind of made me laugh, but it resonated as well. So what he says in this chapter about no one is against you, he says, is your field of dreams mined, booby-trapped, or filled with hostile forces waiting to ambush you? Do you dread venturing out into the sea of infinite possibilities, afraid of being torpedoed or sunk midway in your voyage toward fulfillment? They're out to get me. Indeed, it's understandable how we tend to armor ourselves when life looks and feels scary. So you ask yourself, when somebody threatens you, if somebody blames you or accuses you of something, do you react to protect yourself? And he says, is it possible that these experiences of intimidation, threat, or adversarial relationship, do these arise about how you are relating to the experience, or are you responding to how the experience is relating to you? You have to kind of look at that. Who's controlling who here? Who's running the show? So when we're taking things personally, what it is, it's the ego that's reacting with human emotion. And that's very real. As humans, we do react with human emotion, and sometimes it is scary, and sometimes it is painful. But we can avoid a lot of this stuff, feeling badly in things, when we're able to remember that nothing that anybody does is because of you. It may seem like it, but the truth is, nothing others do is because of you. So from time to time, we've all taken things personally. Jesus taught us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. He taught us to do unto others as you would have done unto you. His message was pretty much, we're all in this together. Look for the good. Be nice. No one is against you. So if we believe God to be the one presence and the one power, absolute good, and we believe that we were created in his image and likeness, then we should see only good in the world and in all people. Through the eyes of God, nobody is against anybody else. Excuse me. Third agreement. Ask us to not make assumptions. And we all remember in the schoolyard what assume means. And if you don't, ask me afterwards. Now, when I looked up the definition of assumption, it's interesting because an assumption is defined as a thing that is accepted as true or as certain to happen without proof. And when I first read that, I thought, that's faith, right? I mean, it's this inner knowing that this or that or something is going to happen. But in the context of Ruiz's 4 agreements, an assumption is kind of looked at as a judgment. And in his book, he asks us to communicate clearly with people to avoid drama and to ask questions when we don't understand something. Seems pretty easy. If you assume that any given person's character or belief system is based only on what they were like 5 years ago or what somebody told you about them or how they're dressed, you're judging them. And it's only through one-on-one conversation that you really get to know somebody. It's really important to give everybody the benefit of the doubt because your next best friend or partner could be standing there right next to you. But if you've already prejudged them because they have tattoos or a different skin color, what may be a soul-to-soul connection or an encounter can be just thrown away because of your preconceived ideas. Hebrews tells us, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. I remember I had talks with both of my boys as they were growing up about racism, because to me, that is the most insidious type of judgment. And I told them, always give people a chance unless they give you a reason not to. And what I meant by that, and talked with them more about that, is, and because they're little, I told them that really there's only two kinds of people. There are the ones that you like and you get along with, and they're the ones that either rub you the wrong way or for whatever reason you just don't like them. What you've got to remember is when you just don't like somebody, it's the personality that you don't like. Because we know we are all children of God. We are all spiritual first. And, if we could remember that, we wouldn't quite have all of these ideas in our mind that we're separate or different. So I wanted to make it clear to my kids that it's fine to not like somebody. That's fine. But if your dislike is based on a skin color, an ethnicity, or what people do in their private time, then really, I explained to them, I said, all you're really doing is guessing. You think that you know what somebody is like based on one little thing, but you don't know what they're like. You're just guessing. So I wanted to encourage them to look a little bit deeper. And I encourage all of us to do that as well. And, what I was teaching them was really a lesson right from Jesus to us, and again from the book of Matthew, and again, one of the greatest hits. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? And I think we've all talked about this. This is a great teaching. It's telling us, basically who do you think you are? What makes you better than somebody else? What makes your style of living or dressing or whatever? We want to look a little bit deeper. And pay attention also to what are we doing in this situation? What is this plank that's in my eye? What are my preconceived notions? And we just don't want to do that. We want to give everybody a chance, to be in our lives. The fourth agreement, The fourth agreement reminds us to always do our best. And that seems kind of like, well, yeah, of course, I always do my best. Maybe not. A thing that a lot of us do, which is unfortunate, and I include myself in the we here, we beat ourselves up over things that either went wrong, didn't pan out, or when we made some kind of a mistake. And this kind of self-abuse, it can ruin our confidence, it stresses us out, and we can make ourselves physically sick. And why do we do that? I was taking a class at Renaissance Unity this past month, and the class was about healing and wholeness. And we were asked to do an exercise called mirroring. And I really suggest this if you want to give this a try. And basically what we were asked to do for a week was find a picture of ourselves as a young child, a picture of us that, like a happy picture of us, as a little girl or boy. And when we felt angry at ourselves, or we're ready to, we started to hear the negative self-talk, we were to look at the picture, which I go like, I had it on my phone. We were to look at the picture and look at that beautiful child that you are and were and are, should have been the other way. And, but ask yourself, would you speak to that little child the way you speak to yourself in your head? And you wouldn't. You wouldn't. And I found myself during the week, I would look at this picture, and and I chose a favorite picture, and I would look at it, and I'm like, everything's going to be okay, honey. Everything's going to be fine. There's nothing to be afraid of. And it was a very cool exercise, and very it teaches you a lot, and it reminds you really how often you want to kick yourself and kick yourself again when you're down. So, we have to remember, of course, that Rome wasn't built in a day. We hear, if at first you don't succeed, try again. We all know that we always have a second chance. Ephesians chapter 4. You were taught, with regard to your former way of life, to put off your old self and to be made new in the attitude of your mind, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true godliness and holiness. So that scripture about our former way of life, it doesn't mean what we were necessarily doing 10 years ago or when we were kids or in college. Our former life is any time we look at an aspect of something we've done before this very second, we say, this isn't working for me. And we take that and make it our former self because we leave it back there and we try something new. And we have that opportunity in any instant to just kind of change our minds. So when an old way of thinking or doing isn't working for you, know that you can just toss that aside and you can start fresh. I'm referring to a lot of books here today, I know, and they're probably all available in the book room, but there's a book that I use all the time with my Tuesday class called Who Have You Come Here to Be? And there is a chapter, I have come here to be determined. And it says, life is full of opportunities to quit in the face of adversity. But you know the value of determined perseverance. You know the joy of overcoming what seemed impossible. Partner with the infinite power of your true self, connected through love to the source of all life. Determination is more than willpower. It's the activity of spirit as you. Galatians chapter 6. No, I'm going to save that one for a minute here. So this activity of spirit within us, working through us, we try to always picture ourselves as this beautiful child of God. And we hold that. And as children, we crawl first, right? First we're crawling, and then we're walking, and then we're running out the door and not telling our moms where we're going. So when we want to get something accomplished, it does require concentration, determination, and like a can-do attitude, but what it also requires is time. And some of us can get frustrated when things don't seem to be happening in the way or order that, you thought they would. And, that's going to happen to you all the time because, we don't predict the future. And now from Galatians, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And, we never want to give up. Now, we know that God's will for us is absolute good, yes? Yes. So all we're asked to do is to do our best. Depending on our state of consciousness, our best from one day to the next could be very different. I was thinking a good example of this, it's an example that works for me. I was thinking about doing yoga. I'm a yoga girl. I'll get back there. But, I notice from class to class how different my body can be. So one day I could stand on one leg. I could stand there all day. Other days I'm just wiggling around and I see myself in the mirror and I always smile, because you have to, it's fun, and they actually tell us in yoga, everybody smile. It's only yoga because we get so serious. And, so some days, I can touch my toes. There are classes I've been to where I've done that pose millions of times, and I'll just sit on the mat. I just put my head down and maybe one day I just can't do that one, and it's okay. So our consciousness works like this. When you know in your heart of hearts that you're always doing your best in any given situation, you can find a new sense of peace and an elimination, hopefully, of that negative self-talk. Just give yourself a break, okay? I've shared this quote with you before because I just love it, so bear with me if you've heard it a lot. It's by Ayn Rand, and it's from her book, Atlas Shrugged. Do not let your fire go out. Spark by irreplaceable spark. in the hopeless swamps of the not quite, the not yet, the not at all. Do not let the hero in your soul perish in lonely frustration for the life you deserved and have never been able to reach. The world you desire can be won. It exists. It is real, it is possible, and it is yours. But you can only reach your goals by doing your very best. Now, before we pause for a little bit of a meditation, what I would like to do is I would like to have you join me. We are going to take the 4 agreements and we are going to make them into positive affirmations that we're going to say together. So, for example, with being impeccable with your word. Yeah, he's right there. So what we're going to do, we're going to make this into an I am statement. So, repeat after me, please, and mean it. I am impeccable with my word.
I am impeccable with my word.
I do not take anything personally.
I do not take anything personally.
I do not make assumptions.
I
always do my best.
I always do my best.
And now let's pause for a moment. Let's just breathe first. Take a few nice deep breaths. And let's settle in right where we are. And get comfortable and clear your mind. Just clear your mind of anything that you need to do later or tomorrow. And just be. Sit in your chair here and just feel that God is holding you in His hand. You are safe. You are secure. And we pray, Father, Mother, God, we are always grateful for new wisdom, new ways of looking at our world and our place in it. There have been many master teachers in the history of our time, sages, mystics, shamans, men, women, and societies who have discovered that there is always more than the eye can see and always more than the ear can hear. As we set aside pettiness and judgment, we use our words and do our best to contribute to the harmony of not just our own consciousness, but to the world. And so it is.